I'd like to start this class with a brief introduction to HTML, and get an understanding for what it is, and do we need to know HTML in order to use Dreamweaver? Before we can do that, though, we need to have a little bit of an understanding of what the internet is. The internet is millions and millions of computers all connected to one network, countless billions of computers at this point perhaps, that are sharing information in a number of different ways. One of those ways that they share it might be through email. Now you can do that through the web, but if you're using a desktop program, say Outlook or Outlook Express on Windows or Apple's mail program, you are not doing that through the web, you're doing it through the internet. You also might use the internet to send files up to a server. We'll be doing that through a process called FTP, or File Transfer Protocol. Again, this is not a part of the web, it's a part of the internet. Other things you could do on the internet include controlling one computer from another remotely, all sorts of different things that could be done. For our purposes, though, and for really what most people are doing, the most important part of the internet at this point is the web. That's when a file comes from some server out in the cloud, up wherever, and comes down to your computer. That is done with a language called HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language. What I'd like to do is discuss a little bit about what is this Hypertext Markup Language. We'll be working with that throughout the semester. We'll be focusing on more of a graphical way of looking at it, but we do want to have an idea of the code. So let's talk about what this Hypertext Markup Language is. So let's start with the first word, hypertext. Hypertext is active text. You click on it and something happens. Or perhaps it's not text, it might be an image, but when the web first got started it was mostly text, and so they referred to it as hypertext. This is usually a link. It takes you to some other place or creates some action on your system. Markup, we'll talk about this in more detail in a minute, but it's a symbol in the file that tells the web browser what to do. You have in this text file, and HTML is simply a text file, pieces of code that let you know to do bold facing or let you know to have something have importance. We'll talk about those in just a minute. And then language. A language is just a way to communicate. In this case, it's between some web server somewhere out there in the cloud and your computer, specifically the web browser on your computer. The way this is done is through a protocol called Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That is the method in which HTML documents are taken from a server to your computer. That HTTP you will see often when you look at a website and you see that http://somesite.com. Right now, let's go ahead and focus on what is markup. Again, those are different symbols that tell the web browser what to do. The web browser being Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox, Safari. There's other ones out there. Those are the most popular. All those symbols are directions that are followed by a web browser. Now, you might not be familiar with that with a web browser, but you're familiar with that in other areas. For example, when driving, if you see a sign that looks like this, you know, no U-turn. Or you see a sign that looks like this, you know you have to stop. Those are just symbols that tell you as a driver what you need to do. Some symbols will have a beginning, such as roadwork, and they'll have an ending. End roadwork, you have a beginning symbol and an end symbol. HTML works that way. You generally, though not always, have a beginning symbol and an ending symbol. An example of that might be, this is my text, that's a paragraph that I've written. At the beginning, you have, this is the beginning of a paragraph. That's the symbol right there, or what they call a tag, that bracket P end bracket. At the end of that paragraph, you end it with, this is the end of the paragraph. Looks the same, except there's that slash that's associated with it. We'll talk about a number of different tags, but here are just some. There's the paragraph with our P tag. There's strong. There used to be a tag that was referred to as bold. It's been deprecated. It's no longer used. They now use strong, which is generally shown as bold. Well, why not just say bold then if that's what we mean, bold? Well, what if you're talking about a screen reader? A screen reader is a device used for people who are sight impaired or are blind. They can't see bold text, so the text might be spoken out in a more full way so that you can hear that that text is strong. Most tags in HTML are built this way. They're based on the semantics or the meaning of the code and not on the visual aspect. For the visual aspect, you use some styling based on cascading style sheets, or CSS, which we will talk about in detail in later units. Another example of a tag is emphasis, generally shown with italics, but not always. Again, it depends on the device. And as a developer or a designer of a web page, you could decide that strong and emphasis shouldn't be bold-faced and italics, but maybe red or green. You'll have that ability to make that change once we get into styling. These tags apply all sorts of places on a web page. Even the entire web page will be surrounded by a beginning tag that says HTML and then an ending tag that says end HTML. But not all tags have a beginning and an end. For example, you might have a line break within a paragraph, and there's some text. The one tag is simply BR for break. Using modern HTML, you don't need that ending slash. I like to have it in there, and it's completely fine to have it there that says this is the beginning and the end of the tag all in one place. I think it makes things a little bit more clear, but it's really up to you. It's up to developers which method they like to use. There's some variations on HTML, especially with the newest standards that are out there. One of the common tags we'll get is the image tag. But we see this right here. There's no beginning and end to an image. It just pretty much is, here is your image. But what image? Any image on the internet? An image of a house? An image of a dog? You don't know with just this tag. With that tag, and with many tags, you need to have something that tells the tag what is, in this case, the source. SRC there stands for source of our image. And it might be a file called myimage.jpg. What this is, you have your tag, image, and with your tag, you have an attribute, or you might have multiple attributes. When you're working with an image, you'll have attributes not just of what the source is, but the height of the image, the width of the image, other things of that nature. With Dreamweaver, a lot of this coding and putting in of these tags and putting in of the code itself is handled through the menu system and through different palettes. And so you don't need to be looking at the code all the time. Still, if we look back at our initial questions, what is HTML and do we need to know it to use Dreamweaver? Hopefully we have at least a basic idea of what HTML is. And do we need to know it to use Dreamweaver? You don't need to know it well, but I strongly encourage you to keep an eye on it, and we'll talk about how to do that, how to look at your code, so you can get a feel for what's going on with the code. This will help you to work with Dreamweaver better. It will also help you if you start to work with other web development tools in the future, and there are many of them out there.